Hi guys and welcome back. So today we're going to write code to create clusters for our application as we discussed in the last video. But before that I want to install one package which is called socket.io/sticky. So let's install here. I'm going to do npm I. I'm going to say at socket.io/sticky. Now you have to write this in terminal because in VS Code's terminal it gives an error for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm going to press enter. This is going to install the package. So meanwhile I'll explain what this is. So basically what sticky session is going to do is it will make sure that all our requests associated with a particular session, with a particular user, reach the process which originated them. So if I'm sending a request to the server, the sticky session will make sure that my session ID is mapped to the request, and whichever worker has the process which has the request will create a map. So sticky session will make sure that it creates a mapping of which worker has which session. So when the process is done, when we have a result, when we have a response, worker will just easily retrieve the session which the user has sent, and then it will forward it back to the main process, and then main process will send it back to the client, which is me. So that is what the basic ideology of sticky is. If you guys want, you can read it on socket.io's documentation. So moving further, I'm going to close this. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create a new file inside here, and I'm going to say cluster.js. So here I'm going to write import cluster from cluster, and next is going to be import process. I'm going to use that as well. Then I'm going to import a method from our recently installed package, add sticky session. So here I want to import setup master method. So let's start by writing a for loop. Let's start by creating the workers. So I'm going to replace this index with I. There we go. And it's going to have some array, right? So I want to declare a constant. I'm going to say this as workers underscore count equals 4. For now I'm going to keep it 4. So array.length, let's get rid of this. So inside here I want to write cluster.fork. So this is going to create our workers, right? So next I want to create an HTTP server. For that I need HTTP from HTTP. There you go. And I'm going to say HTTP dot create server inside. Not inside. I'm gonna store this inside a constant. HTTP server equals, right? So then I'm gonna call this method, pass in the HTTP server object, and put in some options. So one of the options is going to be load balancing method. So there are a few different methods for this. I'm going to use least connection for now. We can change it at a later stage. Other two are random and the one I mentioned in the last video, round robin. You can use either one of them. Depends on the project that you're working on. For now I'm going to use least connection. Next I want to make this HTTP server listen. HTTP.listen to a port which is going to be 4000, and this is going to point to a function, and I'm going to console.log over here. So server listening to listening at port, and then dollar and write 4000. Actually, let's put this inside a constant because this is not a good practice to hold. So constant port equals process dot env dot port. Either it's going to be I'm going to declare this from terminal, or it's going to call the port 4000. So let's replace this now. There we go. This looks much better. So yeah, we created workers. Oh yeah, so the first time this runs, right? First time this runs, this cluster is considered as a master cluster. After that, it's going to fork. It's going all of the processes which it's going to create are going to be workers. So the first time this comes, it's going to be master. It's going to be considered as master. So I wanted to be considered a master. So here in this object there is a property which lets us tell if this is a master process or a worker process simply by saying is master. So if this cluster is master, then I want all of this process inside over here. So after this cluster has been called and processes have been created or cluster has been forked, all of these are going to be all of the later processes are going to be my workers process. I want to log over here, so I'm going to say master, and this is going to have process dot pid. Yep, pid is running. So I just want to say, I just want to know that this master server is running on which process ID. So after this is done, and whatever, and if, sorry, the cluster is not master, so that means cluster is a worker. I want to log actually worker, and I want to see the process ID if this is different or not. So process.pid started, right? And after this it's going to be our main index.js functions calling. So here we're gonna have all of the index.js called. We're gonna write a method over here which is gonna call index.js. So we'll do that later. I also want to write if the cluster is dead or not, if the cluster is exited, one of the cluster has exited or not. So if the cluster dot on method c, it has constants over here. Yeah, I want to use exit, so this is going to point to an arrow function. Inside here it's going to have the worker, which worker decided to exit. Let's log that as well. So worker, I want the process ID for this. Process.pid died. Yeah, so if if one of my process or one of my worker is dead, I want to create another one, so to replace that worker. So say replay cluster.fork. It's not process already, worker dot process dot pid. Yeah, so this is it for the cluster file. And now let's jump into our index file and write that function that I was talking about. So here I want to write import from at sticky. Yep. So here I want to write the other function, setup worker, and I'm going to call over here. So we are starting our server over here, and then we are creating workers after that, and after this our IO, our server, our socket IO is going to start. So here I'm just going to write a function, just going to say export function, right? So start, I don't want any parameters inside this. I'm going to call this function, and I'm going to pass in our IO constant, or socket.io server constant. This is it, and let's import our start function which we have written. So import start. I don't accidentally want to import some another directories start function, so /index.js, and I'm gonna call this function right over here. So that is it. This concludes our cluster file. I hope you guys understand what the process is behind this. So just a quick overview. We created our first master process. Then after that, whichever process are created are going to be the worker process. And after that, we started our server. We set up our master, our load balancing method, and then after that, these workers are created. As soon as these workers are created, it's mapped on our socket server. These workers are mapped on a socket server. So yeah, this is it for our cluster file. Next, I'm going to implement the Redis. I'm very excited for that. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna start with this session storage. I'm gonna have some class structure implementation because I don't exactly like this. I'm going to implement two classes. I'm going to restructure this. Actually, I'm going to call this as in-memory storage, and second one is going to be the Redis session storage. So I'm very excited for that. We're going to learn something new. Redis is very exciting, very interesting as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.